Hello and welcome to my presentation. The topic of this presentation is space weather and geomagnetism. I will primarily be explaining what these two terms mean and how they are quantified in the scientific world. I will give a brief overview of the instruments used in this field before moving on to discuss a statistical study done on the topic. Here you can see the overview of the presentation. Each of these titles are hyperlinked to their relevant slides. Space weather is a branch of space physics and heliophysics concerned with the time varying conditions within the solar system. Phenomena such as coronal mass ejections and geomagnetic storms all fall in this discipline. These events have significant effect on the life on Earth, especially on human lives, since we are extensively dependent on electromagnetic phenomena for our day-to-day activities. Geomagnetism, on the other hand, is the study of the dynamics of Earth's magnetic field, which is produced in the inner core of the planet. It is generated in the outer core of the Earth due to a self-exciting dynamo process. Electrical currents flowing in slowly moving molten iron generate the magnetic field. In addition to this, Earth's surface also has sources of magnetic field in its crust and in the ionosphere and magnetosphere of the atmosphere. In fact, according to a recent study published in 2018 conducted by European Space Agency's SWARM satellites, the ions present in the ocean water also generate a type of magnetic field called oceanic magnetic field. This field, although is significantly weaker than the field produced by the molten iron core of the planet and could be detected only due to the high level of accuracy of the instruments used aboard the SWARM satellites. This color graded map here shows the signals generated by Earth's oceans. As mentioned above, geomagnetic storms and substorms are two of the phenomena that fall under the umbrella of space weather. Geomagnetic storms are commonly referred to as solar storms. A substorm, on the other hand, is sometimes referred to as a magnetophysic substorm or an auroral substorm, is a brief disturbance in the Earth's magnetosphere that causes energy to be released from the tail of the magnetosphere and injected into the high altitude ionosphere. Visually, a substorm is seen as a sudden brightening and increased movement of auroral arcs. A geomagnetic storm is a major disturbance of the magnetosphere that occurs when there is a very efficient exchange of energy from the solar wind into the space environment surrounding the Earth. These storms result from the variations in the solar wind that produces major changes in the currents, plasmas and fields in Earth's magnetosphere. Here you can see how the solar wind and the solar flare interact with the Earth's magnetic field and how the magnetic field sort of forms a shield around the planet and protects the planet from the harmful radiations accompanied by the solar wind. In cases of more intense flares, the magnetic field is disrupted even more, weakening the shield. Then we have Van Allen radiation belts. A Van Allen radiation belt is a zone of energetic charged particles, most of which originate from the solar wind that are captured by and held around a planet by that planet's magnetic field. Earth has two such belts. One is in the inner portion over here, and then one is the outer belt. Then of course we have the coronal mass ejections or CMEs. These and their associated shock waves and coronal clouds are also important drivers of space weather as they can compress the magnetosphere and trigger geomagnetic storms. Solar energetic particles, or SPEs for short, can significantly affect human activity as they damage electronics on board spacecrafts and threaten the lives of astronauts. These images are images of coronal mass ejections taken on February 27th, 2000 by the SOHO spacecraft that is operated by NASA. Next, we will talk about measurement of geomagnetism and tracking space weather and the associated phenomena. Space weather is monitored at ground level by observing changes in the Earth's magnetic field over periods of seconds to days, and by observing surface of the sun by observing radio noise created in the sun's atmosphere. This map over here shows the distribution of geomagnetic observatories across the planet. This is one of the structures actually used to track the magnetic field of the Earth. Geomagnetic observatories make absolute vector observation of the Earth's magnetic fields and record them accurately and continuously for a time resolution of 1 minute or less. The site must be magnetically clean, which means isolated from other magnetic fields such as from ores or from man-made infrastructures. And then, of course, we also use satellites to make geomagnetic measurements, although they make intermittent measurements and are relatively short lived compared to ground based observatories. These are some of the more popular satellites used in this field. The first one is called MaxSat. It was launched in 1979. Then there was Orsted, launched in 1999. Then CHAMP, launched in 2000. Then we have ESA Swarm, launched in 2013. This one is of particularly interest in the present time, since this setup comprises of not only one but three satellites. Two of them, the Swarm A and Swarm C, fly at a lower altitude, and the third one, the Swarm B, flies at a higher altitude. Other direct and indirect measurements are also performed occasionally. Direct observations involve surveys done by aircrafts and ships, and indirect observations involve studying the archaeological remains of pre-18th century era using paleomagnetic techniques. Tracking solar activity is another important aspect of space weather, since the sun has a huge influence on how the weather changes. The notable mentions, in my opinion, are NASA's SOHO spacecraft and the Solar Telescope at Aries in Nainital. Moving on to talk about the statistical study of extreme geomagnetic activities published by Kataoka in September 2020. The premise of the study is as follows. Statistical distributions are investigated for magnetic storms, sudden commencements and substorms to identify the possible amplitude of 1 in 100 year and 1 in 1,000 year events from a limited data set of less than 100 years. The list of magnetic storms and sudden commencements, or SCs for short, are provided from Kakioka Magnetic Observatory, while the list of substorms are obtained from Supermag. Based on statistical distributions, the probable amplitudes of the 100-year or 1,000-year events can be estimated for magnetic storms, SCs and substorms as approximately 750 nanotesla, 230 nanotesla and 5000 nanotesla respectively. It is still hard to predict the amplitude of unprecedented extreme events by soul physics based on simulations, and therefore statistical analysis of these storms and substorms becomes necessary to estimate the quantitative amplitude of the possible extreme events. One of the extreme geomagnetic activity events was observed associated with an episodic solar flare on 1st September 1859, which has been considered as a measure of extreme events. This event has been named as a Carrington event. A 1 in 100 year event is estimated to have an amplitude of about 880 nanotesla, that is similar to the Carrington event. These and events with higher amplitudes are events we must aim to predict well ahead of time with some degree of certainty. These are the results visualized in plots. This figure over here shows the majority of the magnetic storms roughly follow the log normal distribution, and the large amplitude population, which implies amplitudes more than 200 nanotesla, may follow the power law distribution. The log normal fit for amplitudes more than 200 nanotesla storms gives us the 100-year and 1000-year event amplitudes as 750 nanotesla and 1100 nanotesla respectively, while the power law fit gives the 100-year and 1000-year events as 1100 nanotesla and 2200 nanotesla respectively. The largest amplitude in the list is 661 nanotesla that occurred on 24th March 1940. This figure shows that SC events follow a log normal distribution within the amplitude range of 5 nanotesla to 70 nanotesla, while the large amplitude SC events deviate from the log normal distribution and follow a power law distribution. The log normal fit gives the amplitude of 100-year and 1000-year events as about 160 nanotesla and 240 nanotesla respectively. The power law fit gives the amplitude of 100-year and 1000-year events as 230 nanotesla and 450 nanotesla respectively. The largest amplitude included in the list is 220 nanotesla that occurred on 13th November 1960. And this figure over here shows that substorm events essentially follow the log normal distribution. The log normal fit gives the amplitude of 100-year and 1000-year events as 5000 nanotesla and 6000 nanotesla respectively. The power law gives the 100-year and 1000-year events as 6200 nanotesla and 8500 nanotesla respectively. The record largest amplitude is 1929 nanotesla that occurred on 30th October 2003 during the so-called Halloween event. In summary, the conservative amplitudes can be estimated from the log normal distribution, while the possible excess and the likely upper limit to the behavior of the tail can be estimated from the power law distribution. In a simplified view, the geomagnetic activities are products of interaction between the solar wind and the magnetosphere. The solar wind parameters follow log normal distributions, while the Earth's magnetic moment does not necessarily change in a short time. This is one of the reasons that majority of the geomagnetic activities follow the log normal distribution rather than the power law distribution. In other words, if the magnetic moment changes rapidly and follows the log normal distribution like sunspots, the occurrence of substorms may essentially follow a power law distribution. Hence, to conclude, based on both the log normal and power law distributions, the amplitudes of the 100-year events can be approximately estimated for magnetic storms, SCs and substorms as 750 nanotesla and 230 nanotesla and 5000 nanotesla respectively. To conclude, the sun and its level of activity have a tremendous effect on space weather in the solar system. This makes predicting space weather a very complex problem. Because of the intricate interactions between many systems, the sun, solar wind, and Earth's magnetic field, and the Earth's atmosphere. Periods of intense activity at Earth can occur during the so-called quiet times of the sun. Just as no one would expect to be able to predict normal weather in the lower atmosphere solely by observing the sun, which causes the changes in weather, understanding the upper atmosphere of the Earth requires an understanding of how Earth's atmosphere responds to the changes in the space environment. Although nothing much can be done yet to protect ourselves and our systems from the devastating effects of a once in a 100 or once in a 1000-year event like that witnessed in 1859 or 1770, having an estimate of the high-risk periods may provide a sense of preparedness to the general populace. Estimating the intensity of these events may also give us an idea about the level of damage these might bring to our systems. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Here are the references, and thank you for your time.